Okay. I last week gave introduction to this Ramah. This is one of the most common din Torahs that people have. The schools, the local schools, before they to avoid the problems, finally they got the contracts written correctly. This was a problem in the schools. It's a problem private people and business. So let's start.
What happens when you have some people that go according to the Ramah, some people that go according to the Tauber?
Choshen Mishpat doesn't work that way. Choshen Mishpat doesn't work that way at all. Doesn't know. No. Choshen Mishpat, as I explained this once, is a whole different. Choshen Mishpat has to do like Kimli could just said. Still, once there's two opinions, you could say Kimli. Okay.
How does the diner know who the pastor?
Well, that's a good question, and if he's I'm going to speak about one shala mamish over here, which some Ochleinim say, and it's not accepted. And the good dayonim say it doesn't make sense. This thing. See, when you go to the Torah, the Toyan, who represents, always likes to pull out. Today, it's much easier than 20 years ago. You go search engines, they pull out. But I'll soon say mamish case when a guy pulled out from. I was sitting in the Torah, Toyin pulled out a piece of tshuva, a piece of avil, tshuva. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a difference. The person don't say that way. I will soon. This is very
the whole stuff that the Dayanim don't even know about.
Yeah.
They're going online and finding this stuff.
Yeah. Today it's very easy, much easier than it ever was. So let's start this Remu. Very, very important Remu. This Remu. Let's see if Ches. Did you? Chavav. Got it? Okay, can I start? Yeah, got it? So he says like this. Shliach Tzibur. The Shliach Tzibur. This is the story, what happened. There was a Shliach Tzibur, shehisker atzmoi imenhigehu ir l'shona. V'tanai kach v'kach. Let me explain the story, what happened. Today it's not an item anymore, but it used to be a city would hire a Shliach Tzibur. He was a chazan, he davened every day. If there was no one to daven, he was in charge. Shabbos, he davened nicely. It was a job, it was paid. So, in those days, in Europe, till my parents lived in such communities in Hungary, there was Kehillah and there was the city council. 5 people, the city council. So they made a contract last year with the Shliach Tzibur. This is your salary with the fringe benefits. They couldn't give a full salary. So part of the salary was the children go to school for free, and part of the salary you're not going to have to pay the taxes, the Kehillah taxes. That means everyone had to pay for the Kehillah. And they had certain fringe benefits. The next year, what happened was, there was a new city council. And the new city council, when he was hired, and he came to the fringe benefits, we didn't make the condition with you. They made it. They rehired. Second year, there's going to be a big question in the Pesachim, what the story was. Was it that they rehired him, or he just worked quietly? We soon see. Let's say he was rehired the second year, but they say, I'm sorry, yes, you said you could work this year. We didn't make the deal with the fringe benefits. Yeah, the regular thick salary, whatever the salary, the Ikka salary, how you say, the cash salary, what we paying you, that you're right. But the fringe benefits, like I just said, that you don't have to pay tuition and you don't have to pay this and you're going to get this. We didn't make up. That was the din Torah, which would happen. So the Remu says, Shliach Tzibur, shehisker atzmo imenhuge ir l'shuna, but nai kach v'kach, with conditions so and so. V'ach kach hisker atzmo lebnei ir azois, imenhigem shnia, new city council, v'lo hisna vadai al tnai horishin hisker atzmo. Tonight, the first condition, they. The Rabbi is saying we assume that it goes with the first condition. Now, so let's stop for a moment over here. Let me tell you what the biggest shala that happens today in Tauber, in New York, and happened in Etzisur. I see. I have a sefer from, the Piska. What happens at Etzisur? A guy has a store, a business, and sells it to another guy. The whole business. So it's Yiddish people. He sold it. So the second year of the contract, they kept on working. The guy says, he looks over comes in. Guy says, the last year my contract was so and so. I don't agree to the contract.
Right.
The new boss. You understand the difference? Here, it was the same kehillah, the same shliach tzibur. The shluchim were different. You understand the difference? There was a city council that used to change every year, whatever, 2 years. The city council changed it, but the same people, the same worker. But if I sold my business, I had a grocery or a restaurant. I sold it, and there was Yiddish people working there, and the next year he keeps on working there, the person can say, we don't say this rule over here. That we say that, it goes on automatically. But it's very not clear. This is very fuzzy. What do we do? But this, they all come out, everyone agrees. He didn't hire him. The contract was for 1 year. So when it comes the second year, he could say the fringe benefits is not. Many Yechonim learn, the Orach Shulchan learns, the cash deal is the cash deal, because,
Even in the new case that you gave?
Yeah, in the new case, because the guy's working. What is he working for? Susi. There are who hold, those ladies see, there are Yechonim who hold exactly what you're saying. But I'm just saying, they hold this Ramah does not apply. We'll say, so what should we do? We'll see soon. This Ramah does not apply when a guy bought the business. You follow? This Ramah only applies with the same business, the same, just the guy, the hiring, and
That's a big difference.
That's a huge difference. That's
So at the end of the day, the cases where the guy continued and did his work, and then when he comes for
but there's no, we don't know. Every tzibur has, that case, every tzibur hires differently, the shliach tzibur. It's not like, there's a standard how much you get paid. They pay to it depends on the community, how wealthy the community, how good you are, chazan. In Europe, it used to work that way. It wasn't like a standard.
But we're talking about a case where they didn't re-up or renegotiate, they just went, and he went and did all the
We're going to
things
soon see in a minute. That's exactly. That's the question over here. What happened over here? Did he just slide on, or they said, work the next year. Come, just work. We'll soon see. The Ramu wants to say, the Ramu seems to say over here, he said, come work. Yeah, work. Didn't say anything but come work. You understand?
Everybody would agree that if the new city council or whatever said, hey, it's a new year.
They have a right to change the contract.
This is what we're going to offer you for this year, and
They
whatever.
could change the contract.
We all agree that that would be whatever.
Yes, and that for sure. Let me just say another thing. If they said to him, see, the Yechonim all say another very important thing, that if they said to him, your yearly contract is so and so with the fringe benefits, then automatically next year he works there, he's under the hucha. If the city council didn't read his contract, it's not his fault.
Correct.
That also happened in one of the din Torahs I was reading. You understand? That means if it was clearly said, didn't say I'm hiring you for a year. If I say, let me hire you for a year, okay. They said to him, this is the deal. The yearly contract is cash like this, fringe benefits like this.
Right.
And about the second year, they said your yearly contract. Yearly contract means whenever you're going to work, that's going to be a yearly contract. So when he started working the second year, even though no one told him anything, and no one there, the Chreinim will say, no, that's nothing to talk about. Talking about, we hired you for a year. Very often that's what happened. Many of these places and many of the schools, when they take a new Rabbi, that's exactly what to do. Just today, someone called me up, and in a nice way, one of the schools mutually, when they say mutually, I know what that means already. He was a new Rabbi, and they sent him away. It wasn't a question of the Torah. The guy wanted to know how to write a heteriska. The guy needs money. But the point is, they normally a new rabbi, they don't say this is a yearly contract. They're very careful today, right? You know, Christian community, you read the contracts. They're very a new rabbi
Not involved
on the hiring end.
correct.
You should. You should, because that's when they get into trouble. More than once. I mean, I've dealt with the school, the Cheder Menachem, more than once. So you should, because I hope they're ready. But the board of education make them write contracts the last 10 years, and very makbid because of so many problems. But but normally, let me tell you, that what happens is that what they do is they write, you're hired for a year. We don't guarantee a second year. They write that and they say it for a new rabbi. So then it's safe. You know what I mean? Then that's it. But if they would tell them your yearly contract is that way, then everyone agrees the second year started. So again, the Ramah is saying, let me just repeat the Ramah. The Ramah is saying the first year he was hired. The second year he came back to work. The Ramah says, come. They told him, come to work. And he started working. So we say a daita the first. I want you to show a shach. Very important shach. Look in the shach Mendes. I don't know where on your page it is, the shach.
It's right on the side. Before the big line.
Yeah. He says, perish, so the shach says, Shehiskir atzma mistam liois etzlam oitshuna. He hired at stam to be there for another year. He says, the shach says, what is the remote talking? He says, okay, I'm hiring you for another year. They didn't talk money. You know, I find young people make this terrible mistake. Let's not talk about the money. It's going to work out later. Young people, inexperienced in business, that's the disaster. I told someone this week, the way you're telling me over the business you're doing, Ingerman is starting a business, that's a room for disaster. Anyway, it's correct, you should always remember, always make a contract. It's worth it, it's worth $1,000 you pay for a lawyer to write a contract. You're going to save yourself a headache of headaches. Anyways, so he says, he goes to him and he says, work for me another year, but didn't speak about the money, nothing. That's what the shach is saying. That was the story in the Rivosh. Rivosh was an early edition. He says, what happens? He didn't just say, I'm hiring another year. He says to him, okay, I'm going to work for another year, and my salary, let's say, was $50,000 cash. He said the same amount of money. He didn't mention the fringe benefits. He wants the shach has a chiddush gudel. And I was debating today if I should tell you all the rise of the shach. I don't want to get it's too long. Shach has a chiddush gudel. Once I mentioned the money, I didn't mention the other fringe benefits. Too bad. That's all you get is the cash. That's the shach's opinion.
Makes sense once you mentioned it.
Oh, not everyone. A big machoikis. And this is always the Torah about this.
It's not written there. Either way. It's all verbal.
Verbal. Because written, because usually writing you write much clearer. But even written, if it was ambiguous, it's the same thing. You know, if it's ambiguous. So again, the shach is saying, if I mention money, and I didn't mention the fringe benefits, the shach says, you lost that out. So the shach is saying, it's only when I said, okay, I'll work for you another year. No money spoken. Once I mention money, or even more or less, doesn't make a difference. Let's say I want $60,000, and they agreed, $10,000 more. But you didn't mention the fringe benefits, you lose out. That's the shach shitta. So he says, Vad omrini shaper, we say, midi kotso eschiris, and it's like a new hiring. Now, I want to tell you something. We look weiter. The Ir Shushan is the Levush. Do you know who the Levush is? I don't know if you people don't know. The Levush was a Talmud of the Ramah. The Levush, and he wrote 10 Levushim. 10 Svarim he wrote. It was very, very big. It was one of the Gedolei Ador. So the Levush, he says, the Loikir, I don't know if you know. Let me just tell you, in Chabad I should know it. The Shulchan Rav tries to quote the Levush, but Levush always gives a reason. If you know in Hilchos Talmud Torah, the Shulchan Rav shitta is that you have to know the reason of the Halacha. If you learn Hilchos Talmud Torah. So that's why it's known in the Shulchan Aruch through that he always quotes the words of the Levush. The Levush also worked with that Mahalach to explain the reasoning. But anyways, the Levush here says, not that way. He said, even if I mentioned it, doesn't make a difference. We didn't speak of it at night, nice days. So normally you would think the Shach against the Levush, many Achronim hold like the Levush. The Aruch HaShulchan, who lived there recently, Paskins like the Levush. According to Aruch HaShulchan, if I did say the money, and even though I left out the fringe benefits, you get the fringe benefits. This is common in Teiris. I say common. Very often this is the problem.
You have two big places that are
arguing, right, about this. This is a very important. This is what they do. You can't be Moitze Moment. We have a cloud. You can't be Moitze Moment. Unless I once many years ago said on such a din Torah, unless it's so clear that everyone understood that we're going with the older contract. You know, like, but we saw from the whole argument it was against the school, and the school was desperate for money all of a sudden, and all of a sudden they made a big fuss about everything. And I was, he brought, the last year the Rabbi had the same thing, they didn't say anything. He made it shorter than.
One of the schools, they used to pay their Rebbes. The Rebbes teach 10 months a year. And then they decided, it would be nice to have an extra month during the summer. But the Rabbeim were on a 12-month salary. So he said, hey guys, you're teaching an 11th month. And by the way, we don't have to pay you any additional money. So the Rabbeim were upset. They said, they said, no, you had a 1-year contract. This is what we paid you. Now we decided you're working 11 months instead of 10 months. And that's the way it went. And and they worked 10 months for years, and then that was the new arrangement.
Yeah, but if they change in the middle of the year, they have no right to do that. They could say the new year, you want to be hired again, this is the condition.
Hired again, that's again if the contract was only a yearly contract.
Yeah, usually they write that in, because they want to be able to fire Rebbe, so they write that in. But they can't come in the middle of the year say that.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. They let them know, and they said, hey, you're teaching an extra month.
Then I don't know, beginning of the year, you mean?
No, middle of the year.
The middle of the year, no, can't do that.
We've decided to extend it.
Yeah, the middle of the year can't do that.
Is that a neighbor?
Well, see,
It's not.
They're kind of
No.
a 12-month contract.
but that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, because the contract is to work 10 years, and we're going to get paid in 12 months.
Right.
That's not a time. But that's a good question. Let's say they did settle in because they don't want to be fired. So this is many people ask me this. So then it's not Geneva.
They agreed.
You agree? They say, listen, if I'm going to fight it, I might not be rehired. So it's not worth the battle, as they say. But that means that's not Geneva. You could fight it and quit. Many people have this. I couldn't speak up, and there's no such a thing. You couldn't speak up. You don't like it, leave. I mean, there's. Just because you're shy and you're not, that's not a good excuse. Being shy and not be able to be assertive is never a good excuse in Halacha.
What about if you get entrapped?
That's also not. So people ask me this question. Entrapped means because he owes money and they owe him money and they take advantage of him.
Or because he's over there now, if he loses some other option.
Doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make. You have to, that's part of the risk of the business. You know what I mean? So someone asked over here. Someone asked me over here that often he works for a company and they don't pay you everything, and you want to work there to make sure. So that doesn't make. You could quit and they have to pay you. There's nothing. That's your own. I would just say shortcoming that you're afraid to speak up for yourself. There are people afraid to speak up. That's true. I see it in life, but that doesn't in Halacha, that doesn't give leeway. You know what I mean? You were quiet, so maybe you accepted it. You accepted it because you're afraid to speak up. It doesn't make a difference. Anyways, let's move on. So says the Rama, "V'dafke the Musa shechuze v'hisker atzma b'shuna shniya." The Ramuz says only if he was hired for the second year. We didn't say how much. The second year, he was told you're hired again. You know what I mean? Did I what? Did I skip something? V'davke shechuzer hiskatz v'shud mishniya. So the Avo im umad imua mishtika. What happens? No one said anything to him. He just stayed at the job. Lo yamrinen the nisher at nairishin. Now let me tell you a chiddush of the Ramah.
What should they pay him? Nothing. What should they pay him?
First, let me tell you how the Elchonon learned the Ramah. Let me explain this. The Ramah is saying based on this rivash. It's a very long rivash. The Ramah is saying, when does the second year contract? Is we told him, come work for us. Okay. What happens? No one said anything.
Before the second year started?
Before the second year said, okay, come to Davin. Why don't you come? Come to work. No one said anything, and he just keeps on working. So the simple Ramah says that the cash contracts exist, but the fringe benefits doesn't exist. That's how the Darkei Moshe understood the Rivash.
Even though nothing was said.
What did he say?
You're saying even though nothing was said.
Even though nothing was said. Nothing was said, and he kept on working. Others learn that's not what the Ramah meant. Others when the Ramah you get nothing, you get the lowest of this profession. Remember we learned if a guy works in a certain thing, we find out the cheapest, you know what I mean? And he gets the cheapest, but the cheapest chazan
We don't
gets.
learn that he gets everything from last year?
No one has said. Doesn't. But this is very important. All the Achronim disagree with this. The Taz and the Shach and the Guan and all the Achronim disagree. They say the minig never was that way because they say about a chazan, a rav. They said you were hired, and they didn't say anything the next year. They liked him, and they just kept on giving. The minig in Klal Yisrael was not that way. That means even though they said we're hiring you for a year, and the next year came, no one said anything, the contract travels with him. This is, and let me tell you a big din Torah. Can you close this? I don't want this to be. It's in this town. It was a big fight. I don't want this.